Penn State 81, Purdue 70. What a win for the Nittany Lions and Mike Rhoades. Last chance, buy into this team now because they are built for March Madness.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of the show, and Penn State dominates Purdue. 81-70 the final score, but the score is not indicative of how the game went. I think Matt Painter, head coach of the Purdue men's basketball team, put it best that Penn State didn't even play their best, and the result ended up the way they did. Ace Baldwin got into some foul trouble, but still had an incredible game down the stretch. A lot to take away here. Hopefully we can get associate producer Zane Bransfield to join the show as well, and he is going to be joining us. I know that much. But this game was brewing all along. This was a game that was bound to happen now sooner rather than later is what it looks like, because in Purdue's case, that was a top 10 team. And I watched a top 10 team that just beat number 2 Alabama, that beat a top 5 Alabama team, have no answers for Penn State. Zero answers for Penn State, even when Penn State's best player was out due to foul trouble. Like Mike Rhoades took Ace Baldwin out of the game because he was dealing with foul trouble. And Penn State was still able to hold on to a comfortable lead. And that's the difference with this team. It's the difference that Ace Baldwin doesn't have to carry this team anymore. Certainly he helps. You don't want to be without Ace Baldwin. Clearly Penn State would be a different team. My point being is that Penn State can overcome short-term absences of Ace Baldwin, as you've seen. If you're not familiar with what we've discussed on the show prior, it is not incorrect to say that Ace Baldwin, Nick Kern, and Freddie DeLeon are the best defensive backcourt. That trio in the backcourt are the best trio of defenders in not only the Big Ten Conference. I can say that with 110% confidence in the Big Ten. But when it comes to the country, they're in that conversation too. So when it comes to the Big Ten, they're clearly the best, and they played that way. Purdue had no answer. They were flinging up shots to even get this game within. I mean, I think the largest lead Penn State had was 26, 20. I definitely over 20 at one point in time, but I lost count if it was 24 or 26. I mean, that was a complete team win across the board. You got help from everybody. I thought that Puff Johnson had a quality game. Freddie DeLeon obviously deserves a lot of credit here because this is your, I guess, fourth option in the sense in terms of offense. Penn State's going to turn to Ace Baldwin to manufacture. He runs the show. He's going to score points. He's going to assist. He's going to get rebounds. And he's going to play defense. He will give you a complete game night in, night out. And then you go to Puff Johnson. You go to Zach Hicks. And those guys will rotate and everything. Yannick Koenen-Niederhauser is certainly going to be a guy that's going to go through the offensive rotation. And then Nick Kern Jr. So for Freddie DeLeon, he's competing for all these different reps and had maybe the best night on the team. Didn't get into foul trouble, was 6 of 11 from the field, 2 of 3 from three-point range, and was playing quality defense and was carrying the team when Ace Baldwin had to go to the bench. So that tells me a lot about what Penn State thinks of Freddie DeLeon, because they said, okay, Ace Baldwin's in foul trouble, no problem. No problem. I did not see Penn State hesitate. I did not see Penn State panic because Purdue was trying to push the pace. They had a window of opportunity to at least make it competitive, and they never made it competitive when Penn State's best player was out on the bench. That's what's telling. That's what's telling. When Penn State lost its best asset for a good portion of the second half, what was that, 10 minutes, a dozen minutes, that Ace Baldwin, because he reached his 4th foul? It's not the NBA. You don't get 6, you get 5. And Mike Rhoades did the right thing. Take Ace Baldwin out. No reason to leave him in there. And Penn State still kept a comfortable margin. Never, and that was the test. That was the test, because I was watching that and saying, okay, If Ace Baldwin, when Ace Baldwin going out here, how is this team going to adjust? What are they going to look like when the best overall player is not available for them and can't come back in until later in the game? And Penn State did not miss a beat. Penn State did not miss a beat. Penn State was the faster team. Penn State was the more aggressive team. You look at the points off of turnovers. That was the key to this game. How do you beat Purdue? You defend against the three-point shooting because they shoot above 42% from three-point range. So that's a good three-point shooting team. So Penn State held them in check. And then you force turnovers. You force as many turnovers as possible. And that is now a veteran backcourt. 2 years ago, freshman dynamic duo comes in and they don't, and Purdue was a solid team at the time, but certainly vulnerable. That's why they had that round of 64 exit. But now with Zach Edey gone, those veterans that were all freshmen step up. And so they're good. Purdue was in the top 10 for a reason. They just knocked off a top 5 Alabama team. And Penn State dominated them. It was a convincing win. Stormed the court. They absolutely deserve it. The fans. But now I say this. This is the last opportunity to buy into Penn State men's basketball for this season. And it was something we talked about all summer long. Talked about in the preseason. First couple of games. Hey, this is the making of a March Madness team. Okay, now they're starting to show it. This is really the last chance. You don't just casually, this didn't happen by accident. You don't just casually dominate a top 10 team. And that's what Penn State did. Penn State dominated a top 10 team and won accordingly. So this was the game that Mike Rhoades needed to build some momentum going into the remainder of the season, at least this first portion, this first half of the season. Because now you build the confidence in your team. And I know there was belief. I know there was belief in this team. They all bought into Mike Rhoades, but now it's tangibly there. Now you can fully, this is what we're capable of. If they didn't know it already, now they know. And the fans know it too. Now there's buy-in. So I know the non-conference schedule was not great, right? It wasn't the most enticing, but I will say this, that now there's no more excuses. If there's a Big Ten conference game, Penn State should be able to sell out for those big primetime matchups and get decent crowds for those middle of the week games. Certainly deserves the support here. Zane Bransfield, associate producer to the show, will be joining us on the upcoming segment. We'll respond to your comments. If you are able and willing to join us in our conversation, Penn State defeats Purdue 81-70 on this live recap. On the other side of this break, we'll talk more about the impact of this win here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks, and that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier than before. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on incredible seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. And let's look at Gametime for tickets to the Big Ten Championship. If you're still considering attending to this game, you can go to Gametime or go to gametime.co on your browser or go to the Gametime app and you can see tickets for the Big Ten Championship. And those Gametime picks are already filtered for me. Super deal listed right at the top. The Loge sideline, section 335, row 2, all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. $93. An amazing deal. Loge, end zone, section 451, row 20, all in pricing, $39 per ticket. $39 per ticket on Gametime. If you're looking for the lowest price on all the tickets available on Gametime, upper end zone, terrace section 625, row 14. You can get into the Big Ten Championship for $28, all in pricing on Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. You can download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And let's welcome in Zane Bransfield to the show. And Zane, give me a moment to pop the headphones on as we welcome you in. Don't need headphones for the solo segment, but it's great to hear from you. Boots on the ground for this one. You saw the court storming. You saw Penn State absolutely dominate Purdue. What'd you like about this game?
Penn State brings a lot of energy. I think that's the biggest thing they add. They play gritty. We got to talk to Matt Painter after the game in a post-game presser, and even he said, he's like, Purdue brought no energy and Penn State brought a lot of energy, and they were chasing the balls all around. And I think that's Penn State's biggest asset is they're a gritty basketball team. I've been saying from day one that Puff Johnson, he does all the intangible things that Penn State needs him to do. And Mike Rhoades doubled down on that. Mm-hmm. And he was like, without Puff Johnson, this game could look a whole lot different. And I think Penn State has proven that they bring energy. They're a full 40-minute team. It's like they could be down at halftime. They could be up at halftime. It doesn't matter. And they're going to play throughout the full game. And they're going to play hard until there's 3 zeros on that clock. And I think that's a testament to what Mike Rhoades is building here at Penn State. He plays hard. He said that was probably the best defensive first half that he's seen in his entire in his career here at Penn State. And I agree with him. I thought Penn State played lights out defense, and I think they can continue to do that. He's like, you mentioned about how Mike Rhoades wants people like the team and the fans, everyone to buy in. Well, what he wants people to buy in on is that this Penn State team is always going to be good at defense. They're always going to play fast. They're always going to be gritty. Yeah. And they proved that tonight. And like you said, Purdue had no answer. It didn't matter if it was Puff Johnson at the 5, Yannick Conan-Niederhauser at the 5, Nick Kern Jr., somebody else. What do you do when you have that much depth on a team that's fast and physical from the first whistle to the very last?
Precisely that. We are all in on the fact that this Penn State men's basketball team can make March Madness. They will make the tournament. Things have to stay on course though. Stay healthy, right? But this team at its core, with everybody available, is a March Madness team. And this isn't, this is a round of 64 team. No, this is a team that could round of 32, Sweet 16. I'll kind of temper my expectations there. I really do think right now I see around, because this was a top 10 Purdue team. They dominated. They were up by 25 points roughly on the margin. It was 24-26, give or take 25 points. You know, 25-point lead against a top 10 Big Ten opponent that just knocked off a top 5 Alabama team. We'll go to the comments. Thank you for joining the show. Jay Wine, CFP and March Madness. Everything school. This isn't everything school. Penn State women's volleyball hosting tournament matches. Penn State women's soccer, shout out to them because they just made the NCAA tournament semifinals. Unfortunately, they did not advance. But yes, Penn State is an everything school. Penn State better be ranked in the top 20. Edward says Penn State better be ranked in the top 25 after knocking off number 8 Purdue. The naysayers that picked Penn State to finish 17th are pretty foolish. That's just bad. Right. I was thinking about that too, because The Athletic, other publications that just, did they not pay attention? Did they not think that Penn State wasn't going to get any better? Because that's just we saw what they did last season. They brought everybody back, but like you almost have to convince yourself otherwise. And I feel like that takes a lot of work. That people had to convince themselves that Penn State didn't get any better by retaining Ace Baldwin, DeMarco Dunn, Puff Johnson, Nick Kern, Zach Hicks. You return your main 5 players, and you basically have to convince yourself that they're just not going to get any better. Then the players that left via the transfer portal, they end up bringing in their replacement, and their replacements are all graded better on the recruiting rankings through the transfer portal. Like Freddie DeLeon, for example, is rated higher than a Jameel Brown was in the transfer portal and in the recruiting rankings out of high school. So you either don't do the research or you lie to yourself. And I feel like that's what a lot of and these are supposed to be college basketball correspondents, right? Like this is their job. And their job is to accurately report and assess the situation. And you mean to I get it if you say that Penn State men's basketball, uphill battle, they probably finish around the top 10, 9th, 10th, or 11th in the Big Ten. 18th? 17th, bottom of the Big Ten Conference. Are you kidding me? I don't get it. It's laziness, Zane. It's laziness, or you're lying to yourself when you looked at this Penn State team and said they're going to finish in the bottom of the conference. They're bad.
Yeah, I agree. There's no way you look at this Penn State team and think that they're that bad. Like, even from the beginning of the season, like you said, they brought back the key players and then they only got better. So I don't know where they pull out 17 from, because you would think right off the bat at least top 10, but okay. So now what does Penn State do with this? They know that people are doubting them, and they play every game with their hearts out, and they don't have anything to lose. They're over here rebuilding, as you say. It's Mike Rhoades' second season with the program, but
not a rebuild. It's a reload. It's a reload.
Yeah. But like Mike Rhoades says, sweat with us. They beat number 8 Purdue by 11 points, and it was never close. Now, like Matt Painter said, if Penn State only scored a little bit more in that first half, he would have thought the game was over then. So, and also mentioned that Penn State didn't even play their best game offensively. So if this isn't Penn State at their like true potential, what they're capable of, how good can this Penn State basketball team be? They could go up against the best of the best. That Clemson beat Kentucky. Who's to say that Penn State can't beat a Kentucky, a Kansas, a caliber team this season?
Yeah. This was the number 8 team in the country. This was number 18. This wasn't a fringe. Oh, they're in the tournament. No, Purdue's expected to go to the Sweet 16, Elite 8 at a minimum.
Yeah, they're good every year. Matt Painter is a really good basketball coach. He knows what to expect, and they had, like we said, no answer for Penn State. And Penn State didn't really shoot the ball that well. So if you get guys shooting more shots, Ace Baldwin Jr. only took 5 field goals today. The rest were like all his points were from the free throw line. If you get a guy like Ace Baldwin Jr. shooting more shots, or even a Zach Hicks knocking down more threes, Freddie DeLeon coming into his own, how good can this Penn State team be? I think they could put up like 85, 90 points on a top 10 team that's guaranteed to go to March Madness.
They just put up 81. That's pretty close, right?
Yeah. Who says they can't do it night in and night out? They've proven they average like 90 points a game and put up 81 against a number 8 ranked team. And it's not like Purdue's played nobody. They beat a ranked Ole Miss team. They beat ranked Bama. They struggled against Marquette, who plays similar style to Penn State. But
yes, they do. Yep.
Penn State like essentially blew them out of the water. The game was never close. They led the game for like 30 some minutes.
Exactly. And Edward agrees with us. People would be extremely foolish to take this Penn State basketball team lightly, and that you should do so at your own risk. Yeah. I think what this does is it puts Penn State basketball on notice for everybody else, because this isn't, if Penn State won in a close one, a buzzer beater, or if it came down to the final possession, then at least Penn State has that element of surprise. But I feel like that element of surprise should have been gone with the fact that they kept scoring over 100 points. Okay, it's a non-conference schedule. Non-conference schedule wasn't that great. And then they did lose to Clemson, but they didn't shoot their best in that game. When Penn State is at its best, Zane, back me up on this. They're playing fast. They're playing quick. Everybody's getting involved. Everybody. Ace Baldwin, Freddie DeLeon, Puff Johnson, Zach Hicks, Nick Kern, all in double figures, all had at least 11 points. And then on another night, you can have Yannick Conan Niederhauser go off at any point in time. So the game script kept him off of the floor tonight because he is 7'2", and Purdue had to run and shoot and just play reckless. Essentially, that was Purdue's backup plan. Was we're going to play reckless and just hope for the best here. Maybe some shots will go down, but Penn State's defense from start to finish was suffocating. Purdue couldn't move the basketball. I like the hustle. They out-rebound. They did in the scheme of things, they didn't get more rebounds from them. But the second chance opportunities and Penn State just being able to bleed the clock a little bit more. It's those kinds of things that didn't allow Purdue, and they took their time with their possessions. And like I said, to sum it all up, Purdue had no answer. So this is a great way to start Big Ten play. We'll cap it all off. We'll talk about that idea, Zane. Can this team consistently beat top 10 teams, or is this a mirage? We're also still looking for your comments here. We'll talk about it all next on the other side of this break. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. You can keep the action going with the NFL via FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet just $5. $5, and you will get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. It's that simple. It's that convenient. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And if we look over at FanDuel.com, we can see the lines for the Big Ten Championship. Penn State versus Oregon. Penn State is an underdog, 3.5-point underdog. Oregon is, give or take, minus, the line keeps moving on the money line. Minus 160 one day, minus 170 another day. Penn State plus 130 to 140 on the money line. Seems about where it's going to settle. And then the total moves back and forth. It's 50.5 one day. It's currently 49.5 via FanDuel. If you like those lines, you can check them out over at FanDuel.com. And remember, when you join, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Again, that is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Zane, let's wrap it up here. Get your comments in as well. Want you to be a part of the conversation. Mary says, I'm so proud of how Coach Rhoades has really turned the Penn State basketball team into a force to be reckoned with. All it takes is somebody to care, right? And I'm not saying that you need somebody that's passionate about the program. Mm-hmm. The difference between Micah Shrewsbury and Mike Rhoades simply is they're both good basketball coaches. I'm not going to sit here and trash Micah Shrewsbury, and I know people are going to have different negative opinions about him because he did bolt after 2 years. He said, I don't want to be here, and he went to Notre Dame. But that's fine. That's his potential forever job if he doesn't want to go back to the NBA. Mike Rhoades views Penn State as his last destination. This is his last stop. It's either build Penn State or I don't want to exaggerate, or not die trying, but you know what I mean, right? Because this is college basketball. Let's not get too crazy. But that's what Mike Rhoades is all in. I see the passion. This isn't about business for him. This is personal. This is trying to accomplish so many things, because when has Penn State basketball ever been a powerhouse in the past decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, right? You had times, you had pockets. I've always heard that phrase. Penn State basketball has had pockets of success, not sustained success. You have, thank goodness he's on the staff, because part of the reason this offense is so electric is because of Joe Crispin. Joe Crispin, what happened? They went to the Sweet 16. It was that magical run, but you can point to these select times. Pat Chambers had this team really close. COVID canceled it. And Micah Shrewsbury's second season. Thank goodness for the transfer portal, because Mike Rhoades was able to reload this team, not just rebuild. He went and got his core guys, and then he reloaded with complementary players. So Mike Rhoades knows what he's doing. He succeeded everywhere that he's been. So it is no shock here that in year 2, this team is competitive. And now we're starting to, okay, how high can the bar go, Zane? Because it's not just, oh, they're entering the tournament as a fringe team in the round of 64. No, this team will win in the first round and get to the second round. And I think this is a Sweet 16 team right now. But Zane, do you think that's where it stops? Or are we talking Elite 8? Final Four national championship, I'm going to have to see more. I'm going to have to see consistent success. But Sweet 16 feels like a safe bet here.
Yeah, I agree. Sweet 16 is definitely a safe bet. I wouldn't rule out Elite 8, but I agree. You need to see a little bit more, some more competition. Not that Purdue isn't good, but you need to see, can they consistently do this?
Different types of teams.
Different types of teams that different style of play, different coaches, different battle-tested teams. But Penn State's going to face a lot of those teams here in the Big Ten. The Big Ten has some pretty good basketball teams this season.
Absolutely.
If you look at their schedule, like even next week, Penn State takes on Rutgers, who is struggling a little bit. They're like 7-3, but Penn State has other tough teams they play. They're going to play Illinois, who's currently ranked, and Oregon's ranked later in the season, and Wisconsin is ranked, and other teams that are normally good, like Ohio State. Michigan is rebuilding, but it's not like Penn State has a bunch of these poor, like, out of conference games. Sure, they have a couple more of those as well, but they will have their chance to prove what they're capable of if they are that Elite 8 caliber team or if they're just a Sweet 16 level team. But I
mean, that's
think
still
Penn
saying
State,
a lot, though. Penn State doesn't get to the Sweet 16 very often.
No, they don't. And I think it's a very reasonable expectation for Penn State. The players are dialed in. They know what Mike Rhoades wants. Like you said, he's passionate. The players are passionate because they like playing for him. Mike Rhoades is a player's coach. He's there for the guys. He's here for the fans. He's for the atmosphere. Mike Rhoades is a Penn Stater for life.
Yep.
And this Penn State basketball team, I think, however far they want to take it is how far they'll go. If they want to go to the Elite 8, I think they can make it there. If they don't want to make it past the second round, that's on them. But this Penn State team has the talent. They have the ability to make it that far and to really quiet some people and win those top Big Ten games and maybe win some of those March Madness games as well that get tough with some of those opponents.
Penn State is currently the third highest scoring team. They average the third most team points, 91.3. Samford and Kentucky are above them. So that just kind of gives, Samford obviously is going to play a weak competition, but to be in the same sentence as Kentucky and saying that you are, and I know Kentucky's gone through some changes, right? That's not the same John Calipari team. That's a different team. But more importantly, this is what's telling is the point differential. Penn State is currently top 10 in point differential at plus 23.7. The teams ahead of them, Illinois, Maryland, Tennessee, Utah, UCLA, Kentucky, Missouri, Gonzaga, Cincinnati. Year in and year out, those teams are either in tournament consideration, they are in the tournament, or they are making a deep run into the tournament. UCLA, Kentucky, those are blue bloods. Tennessee is a blue blood. They play Illinois and they play Maryland. So this is an excellent opportunity for, now the schedule's kind of spread out here. They have Rutgers, as you mentioned, then they go back into a simple non-con. You don't have to worry about Coppin State. You don't have to worry about Drexel. You don't have to worry about Penn, even though that will be entertaining over Christmas break, right? Penn State versus Penn. And then it picks back up in the new year with Northwestern, Indiana, Illinois, Oregon. I think that stretch right there, out of that non-conference break where you get a chance to, try some things, refine the fundamentals, it goes from 0 to 100, Zane, in just a couple of games, because Northwestern losing some pieces, probably not going to be as strong as they are, but Indiana well coached, Illinois is ranked, Oregon is talked about as a potential Final Four national championship contender, and you always get the best out of Tom Izzo, and then you play Rutgers that second time. So that 5, give or take 6 game stretch is going to give me a better idea and should give a lot of people a better idea of how serious this Penn State team is. But tournament team, and I don't think they just win 1 game. I think they can win 2, potentially 3.
Yeah, people definitely need to dial in now, join the train. Penn State, whether they make it far in March Madness or not, they're a fun team to watch. And I don't think you can watch this team and not enjoy what you're doing. Big crowd today, the Bryce Jordan Center, a lot of people there, and the place was loud. And I think that can be the expectation at Penn State. I think they can become a basketball school. I'm not saying within the next year. I'm saying within next 5 to 10 years, they could become a basketball school. And I think that's pretty reasonable standard if you keep a guy like Mike Rhoades around who wants to be here and he's passionate. Penn State has that. And when they face that tough stretch of the schedule, a guy like Mike Rhoades is going to keep the Penn State locked in and paying attention to what's at hand. And they go into every game like there's nothing else left. And they just give it their all and they play hard and they fit into that Penn State mentality that Mike Rhoades and his staff instill into the players, and they can win some of those games. And I'm not about to tell you that Penn State's going to only lose like 3 more games. They're going to lose some games, but it's how close they keep those games is what's going to be important, because point differential matters in college sports, and Penn State can keep a lot of those games close. You mentioned Oregon. Oregon is definitely going to be a good team.
Yep.
So will Penn State win or lose? I don't think that matters. I think that Penn State can make it competitive, and I think that's what they're going to do the rest of the season is be competitive and be a team that people aren't going to want to face, whether they're ranked high or not ranked high, because despite beating a number 8 Purdue team, there's a chance that they're not even ranked this coming week in the AP poll. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there.
Yeah, basketball's interesting because it's always the results have to. There's so many results, 2 to 3 within a week, and then they vote once, and then so even if a team loses once or twice, so it's not going to be until that adjacent. So the following week they should be ranked here. We'll finish with a final comment from all of you. Richard Boozle says, it was crazy to see the storming of the court beating a number 8 ranked team. This storming of the court has to be on another level and way higher of a vibe than when they upset Illinois. There you have it. It's the change. It's the eye test. It's how you feel about it. There's not as many question marks. Again, you don't know until you see it. And we saw it today. The 2 biggest takeaways from that game was 32 points off of turnovers. 32 points off of turnovers. And they did it without their best player for a good chunk of the game. A good chunk of the game, Ace Baldwin was not available, was in foul trouble, and Penn State handled business. Purdue didn't even get back into it. 81-70, the final. Penn State improves and is 1-0 in conference. They are 1-0 in conference and just have the 1 loss to start the season to that Clemson team. He is Zane Bransfield, associate producer to the show. My name is Zach Seyko, your host as always. Thank you so much for joining us on this live show of Penn State men's basketball. We'll certainly have more of these as they continue to play more games. So stick around for more conversations about Mike Rhoades and company. And thanks again for being a part of our coverage here at Penn State via Locked On Nittany Lions.